Hi YouTube, hi Spotify, it's Kel. I'm coming back to you with a follow-up on the video that we did yesterday, that posted yesterday. And I just wanted to do a little addendum to the what I call root causes of addiction video. First of all, as a licensed marriage and family therapist, it is my job specifically to focus on the emotional and cognitive uh, causes of addiction. And what I did not mention, and which to me is a given after so many years of being in the addiction field, but for many people it might not be, is that there are uh, it's very much a big part of addiction. The root causes are genetic. And I'm not going to go into those because I'm not a geneticist. And so I don't feel like it falls within my expertise to go really into that. But there's a very strong link. It either runs that addiction often runs, either from parent to child or as it's known in the community, sometimes it skips a generation. And so, or you have like an aunt or, but there's a very strong genetic component to it, number one. Number two, there is very much a physiological component. I'm not really going to go into that either because I'm not a physiologist and I'm also not an environmentalist, which there are environmental factors, right? So, but the physiology piece also clearly when it comes to addiction, just as a basic understanding, the more you rely on a substance and your reward system, the more the reward system then depends on the substance in order to release dopamine in the brain, right? So that is, I mean, one thing that I do know, even not as a physiologist, but someone, who has studied the reward circuit and system, it's obviously if your brain becomes dependent on a certain chemical to release dopamine, to release the feel-good chemicals, serotonin, and all the others, endorphins and whatnot, then obviously it becomes more dependent on that chemical, right? So, which is again a reason why when you start out using a substance, I had addicts say all the time, the first time they got high was always the strongest hit because their brain was not used to that substance, right? But then when you use it over time and you use it consistently, the brain begins to depend on that substance to release the feel-good chemicals. So that is why, again, I've said this multiple times, but it is a short-term solution and a long-term problem. And it really is a pseudo solution. It's not a real solution, but it feels like a solution when people take it the first time, whatever the drug is. But some drugs obviously are more chemically addictive than others, but the physiology is a very strong component. And so again, when I said root causes the other day, to me, obviously as a therapist, I meant the emotional causes and the cognitive, irrational beliefs and things like that that lead to things that a therapist would work with you on. But there are definitely genetic components, there are definitely physiological components, and there are definitely environmental factors that are unique to each person that can create addiction. And one thing I will say, a theme that was very often with a lot of people that I spoke to with who struggled with addiction would say the first time they ever used, kind of the difference between people who a lot of times moderately use or use and are addicted is a lot of times a lot of the addicts that I saw in treatment would say the first time they say drink ever, they knew they could never stop. Like they knew it was going to be a problem for them. They got drunk. Every time they drank, they would get massively drunk and they would drink to get drunk, or get, whatever their drug of choice is, they would use it to the max and they would not have that kind of like the moderation check in them that says, okay, one drink is good or two drinks might be, kind of my max and be able to stop there. Most addicts I have ever worked with have said that I do not have that button. And so, that's another distinct difference, what there's a lot of different factors to what that is, but I just wanted to hop on as an addendum in a part two to causes because I don't want someone to, watch my first video and say, oh, she didn't even mention the genetic component. In fact, a lot of people in AA believe that it is either an allergic reaction or just definitely some kind of disease, clearly, right? So, and to me, I definitely think there is a disease component to it. And that is kind of like in each different person, it's kind of to a lesser degree or to a greater degree, but um, there's also obviously behavioral things and ways that you can um manage it, or uh again, that's why when people don't have, the quote moderate button or the, shut off button or whatever, that is why obviously abstinence is what AA suggests all the time, is because for most addicts who go to AA, there's no, shut off. Now there is whole different program. It's called moderation management. I'm also not going to get into that because I'm not an expert in that, but it is for maybe those people who feel like they maybe use alcohol or use whatever. It can be tobacco, cannabis, whatever. Maybe use it like too much, but they're not addicted to it. There is that kind of, and so maybe they want to learn how to get back into the moderate zone. So there is that, but most people who struggle with addiction know that they're addicts because, within the first few times of using the substance, they had no moderation button. They could not shut it off. They could not say just a little bit. It was like, no, I'm going to get like blasted, hammered, whatever it is. So, um, but again, I'm not going to touch on these subjects because, the genetics or gene factor, I'm not a geneticist. I'm not going to go into that. The physiology of it, again, there's a reward and dopamine system I'm not really going to get into, but it is a huge part of addiction. But again, I'm not a physiologist. I will leave that to the physiologist, but I want to come on here and say these things are very important to the root causes of addiction. I am just not a specialist in those, so I just left my videos to the things that I have experience working with, such as working with trauma, working with, anxiety and depression and things like that. So I hope that this addendum kind of gives a more comprehensive picture to the root causes of addiction. And my next video, I will talk about treatment interventions, and I hope all of you are doing well.